In 2007, Steve Jobs said that this was the best input device. That was 2007. This is 2015. In 2015, we love our touchscreens. We take them everywhere we go. And why wouldn't we? They're light, they're powerful, and they're gorgeous. But they're not a perfect input device. To fully express ourselves, we need better precision and more space. This is Phree, and it takes you way beyond the screen. With Phree, you can write or draw on nearly any surface, and your words or pictures will appear on your screen instantly. Phree brings us back to a more direct interaction with the world around us, in part by freeing us to use one of our most personal skills, handwriting. Phree's sophisticated optical tracking engine can trace anyone's handwriting on nearly any surface to an incredible level of accuracy. There has never been anything like it.
Give us a minute, Mitch.
Our OTM sensor includes a miniature laser, which sends a collimated beam to the surface. Reflections from the surface combined with internal reflections to give us some motion signals.
In fact, we invented the world's smallest three-dimensional laser interferometer.
That is truly amazing. But let me take it from here. Phree is all about minimizing whatever stands in the way of your creative energy. It's got a mini touch display for notifications, lets you reply instantly, and even doubles as a headset to take phone calls.
Hi, Michael.
Write yourself a note the second you think of it. Jot down a phone number or doodle your next brainchild. Your thoughts and ideas are captured instantly on your device. Phree lets you use all of your screen, turning your mobile phone into an incredibly comfortable and efficient mobile creative station. And best of all, Phree is personal. So personal, it can even use your handwriting as a highly sophisticated form of biometric identification, making it much harder for someone to steal your identity.
Phree is a minimal and classic design with a unique ergonomic shape so that the touch display naturally faces you and you can simply select different functions.
We also have an open platform so developers can create exciting new applications.
Together, we can change the way we interact with the digital world for everyone.
We put thousands of hours developing our motion tracking engine, and now we need your support to build the coolest mobile input device. Help us make Phree a reality by backing us on Kickstarter.
It's quick, it's convenient, it's familiar and personal. It's Phree.
All right, please join me in welcoming Gilad Lederer, the co-founder and CEO of Phree. So what you've just seen is a video Phree has put out when running a Kickstarter campaign, and at the time they ran the Kickstarter campaign, which is May 2015, they actually asked for 100,000 euros or US dollars?
Dollars.
For 100,000 US dollars. So let me ask you, how many of you think they've actually achieved that goal of 100,000? Okay. How many think they've been below that? Okay, yeah, excellent. So you're not in the majority. In this case, the majority is right. Somebody has a guess of how much they've achieved? Some guesses of people who are not in my class? Huh? 2 million?
5.
Half a million?
5.
5? A unit would be good.
Million.
1 million? So you had a bet, if I recall this correctly.
So last week, literally, the three founders of the company had dinner together, which finally settled the results of the bet. The bet was between the three of us, who will be the closest, where the one furthest, with the furthest guess, will pay dinner for the one with the closest guess. I got a free meal.
So how much did you? How much ended?
We raised $1 million.
So it's actually 1,065,000, but you see in these kind of dimensions, 65,000, you know,
Yeah.
one MBA tuition fee more or less, you know. So this is obviously fantastic, right? You started this in May 2015. How long did the campaign run?
45 days.
All right, so 45 days, right? It's not an overnight success, but 45 days is not too bad actually to raise $1 million. So when did you first actually, so this is impressive, right? May 2015 started, and then June 2015 they actually have $1 million. When did you first time actually have the idea for this?
I think it was about a year earlier, 2014. There was another Israeli company who became the best Kickstarter campaign for an Israeli company. They raised $2.76 million, a company called Sayo. And one of my co-founders is actually their CTO. And given their success, we thought that it may be a great idea for us to come to market as well. And we became the second best Israeli company in crowdfunding.
When did you actually have first time the idea for measuring distance with like an optical sensor which underlies the technology?
So our PR guy mentioned this once, and I thought it was a great quote. He said that we are an instant success that took 17 years to build. So we founded the company in January '98.
So this is it's a really fascinating. So I'll teach Gilad's I'll teach Gilad's story in class. And I'll do it in a little bit of a kind way, in the sense that the students do not know that Gilad is actually there, and I smash him a little bit, and the students start kind of joining me in, like, oh my God, he's like very persistent, but why is he kind of so stuck on this particular idea? So I actually started in 1998. Can you, I know that the journey is too long to lead us through every detail. I've written it down. It's like 35 pages long if you write it down, and just kind of. But what are kind of the key, why was it so difficult to get this off the ground, Gilad? Why took it from 1998 to 2015, still not kind of in the consumer market, right? Still in a process, basically.
So we are the perfect example of what not to do when you do a startup. So the first lesson they tell you is find the market need and then find a solution to it. Do not by any means find a technology and solution and then try to find something that you can use it for, which is exactly what we did, which may explain why it took so long. So we had the idea for a sensor that measures motion in 3 dimensions optically. And actually through that, we came up with the idea of, hey, wouldn't it be cool to have a digital stylus that works on any surface and you can track its tip motion across any surface and therefore interface or interact with any device, anywhere, on the go, etc. I guess that they're right. You should start with a market need and then come up with a technology, because I think we were over a decade ahead of our time. At the time that we started that, there was no smartphones, no interactive TV, no virtual reality, no wearables, none of that. There were PCs, and as an accessory to a PC, it's a nice gadget, but it's not really something that the world has been waiting for. So we realized that at a certain point, and we basically put everything on hold and waited for over a decade, developing the technology in the meanwhile, and waiting for the market to happen. In 2014, we realized that it's here. There's actually a multitude of digital terminals through which we consume information, but there's more and more need to interact on the go, to actually enter information and to use these devices. We carry, I think you mentioned the time, this is like a supercomputer in our pocket now. This is a really powerful computer that we carry around with us. We're just very limited in how much we can interact with it, simply because we don't have a good interface. And Phree is a very good solution for that, as is for other things like virtual reality, which is the next huge thing. But there is this tiny problem that everybody likes to ignore, that there's no way to communicate in virtual reality because you're in virtual reality. You can't see what you do, you can't see a keyboard, you can't see a mouse, you don't know where your hands are, where the keys are. But with a product like Phree, you have a cursor in front of your eyes all the time. You have a very natural way of interaction, which is writing and using a mouse, which we all do daily.
As you talk about kind of finding the optimal kind of product market fit, what is kind of the main market you are nowadays going for with this product?
So we are, again, we're a very good example in how not to do things, and that's another area where don't follow our example. One of the problems with Phree is that it really is a ubiquitous device. You can do everything with it. You can annotate a document on your PC, a Word document or an Excel. You can take notes to your phone when you sit in a lecture or wherever. You can take quick notes when you just want to remember something. You don't even need another device. You just write milk. And then next time you'll open your phone, you'll have a post that says milk on it. You can be an input device for virtual reality. It can recognize your signature because it measures the dynamic way in which you measure your signature. You can teach children, and specifically in China or in India, we have calligraphy. You can teach them how to write because this traces the way they write and can correct them online. That's a problem. It's a problem when you have a solution to many things because as a small company, you can't just go after everything. You need to focus and start from somewhere and then expand from there. And we find it difficult to identify what is the key market where we want to start now and to expand from there because we are forgoing other opportunities by doing that.
Is there like a geographical consideration in these markets you're going for?
China. There's 1.4 billion people, almost a quarter of the world's population, that use these devices much more than we do, by the way, for pretty much everything, because a lot of them don't have PC at home on which they actually write their long mails, whatever, and they cannot use their own language. It's crazy. They use a Latin keyboard, pinyin, to enter Chinese characters. That just doesn't make sense. With Free, they can enter their own language, 7,000 or 8,000 characters, directly into their phone, their PC, again, whatever terminal they use. So yes, China is the market for us. Plus, they love gadgets. Plus, mobile internet is much more important there, etc.
So moving a little bit away from the from the consumer market you're going for, a little bit more to how you make all this happen. You've entered quite a few partnerships as you've kind of tried to push this into the market. You have done very impressive partnerships with leading firms in software technology, in electronics, too many to mention. But if you kind of reflect on all these partnerships, can you kind of share because as a venture, right, I often do not yet have resources. I need to get partners to get these resources. What are kind of your key lessons from entering and managing partnerships over time?
Randy, this morning in his amazing lecture, when he was asked about what hubs outside of Silicon Valley he can mention as technology hubs, was really jet lagged. He just flew in yesterday, so he forgot to mention Israel. But with all the success of the Israeli startup nation and technology story, whatever, we are really not good in doing consumer electronics. There's been basically a single Israeli company called M Systems who developed Discon Key, and that's pretty much the only consumer electronics success story of the Israeli technology. We're very good in doing technology. We're less good, far less good than the Americans in taking it to the consumer market and doing all the marketing, advertising, shipping, and so that's involved, or the Chinese for that matter, or Japanese, or Koreans. So we don't have any aspirations to become the first Israeli Nokia. We would rather stick with what we're good at, and this is making optical sensor. In that respect, because we have such a very strong IP, because we have such a strong portfolio of patents on the core physics behind this. This is essentially the only sensor in the world that measures motion optically in 3 dimensions, using laser Doppler in this case. So we invented a way to measure laser Doppler not only longitudinal motion, but also translatory motion. Because we have such a strong patent portfolio and such strong know-how, our aim is to sell the tracking engine, the sensor and the signal processing to large and established OEM customers like Huawei, Lenovo, Samsung, Fujitsu, you name it, and have them design their Free and sell it through their marketing and distribution channels. It's a dangerous game to play. You're playing with the big fish or with the sharks, like you call them. They can be your best friends, and then they can turn around and eat you. when you become successful, if and when, hopefully soon, they will start thinking, well, why do we actually have to pay these guys all the time? Maybe we can develop it ourselves. Maybe we can just bluntly infringe and drive them to bankruptcy along the way. Or maybe we can just put such a price pressure on their margins that it becomes something ridiculous, which is not a business for us, but then it's great business for them. It's not an easy process necessarily to manage. You have to keep bringing value. Keep bringing value means that you need to be on edge with your patent portfolio and keep working on it and keep increasing it. It also means that you have to keep innovating and keep come up with new technologies, with additions and modifications that will make them really want to keep working with you rather than trying it on their own.
One thing which students very often kind of take away from when you're in classes is you have this one line where you say like all business is personal. And you have entered all these collaborations, and I wonder if you could elaborate on this a little bit, why that is, why is all business personal, and how this has played out in the case of Phree.
So, like you said, we work with some pretty large corporations out there, so large that I prefer not to mention their names because I don't want the legal department to hunt us down afterwards. And people ask us...
I can mention them, but...
Yeah. People ask us, oh, do you work with Samsung or do you work with Microsoft or did you meet Huawei or and so on and so forth? And oh, we have great connections to Huawei, so why don't you talk with us? These are companies with tens of thousands of people, okay? And of course, everyone can introduce you and whatever. But from my experience, at the end of the day, you work not with companies. You work with people, with a person. You work with a product manager or the division, the head of division, or the CEO of the mobile division who has a personal agenda. He or she, this is what they do now, their revenues are flattening and they need to bring the next big thing, or alternatively they have this big winning product now that they're busy with and they couldn't be bothered with something else, or maybe they're developing something similar to digital pen now and all they will do by talking with you is potentially cannibalize what is their child inside the organization and actually shoot themselves in the foot. It's all personal. You always have to identify who are the key people that you want to talk with, what is their personal incentive in that, and how you can make them successful in the organization. 18 years after we founded the company, I can honestly say that I have personal friends in each and every one of the companies that we work with, the major companies, really. Like people that I keep in touch with to this day, or we keep in touch with, because our job is to make them successful. And if they're successful, then we become successful. And you always have to make sure that you align your interest with theirs.
Gilad, you've been in this journey since 1998, basically, right? So 18 years by now. I imagine this to be incredibly kind of hard on a personal, on an emotional level. Can you describe this process a little bit and kind of strategies, how you dealt with that?
How does this saying go? You know, that the big problem with stupid people is that they don't know that they're stupid. Yeah, well, you know, there's a small line between brave and stupid. I don't know if I've been, you know, persistent or stupid to keep going at this thing all the time. I know that now we're really enjoying it. We're really enjoying it. We really invented a piece of physics, and it's just such a fulfilling experience to bring it to market. You go through a lot of sleepless nights, and I'm not only talking about the overnight flights to China and back, but you know, it's a huge roller coaster. Sometimes it's very, very tiring. And yeah, and when you get rejected, it's like getting punched in your belly sometimes or often. But yeah, I wouldn't change it for anything else. It just you get addicted to the adrenaline. That's the truth of it.
One of the things you've done recently is that you started this crowdfunding campaign. And I wonder if you could share a little bit your experience of how you've benefited from it beyond the money, kind of how this has benefited Phree, basically.
Yeah, so I apologize to all the students who've heard this before, but I just found, I'll repeat myself because I find this whole crowdfunding fascinating. It's really strange. No, I mean really strange. You address the world to people that you don't know, who never met you, and you basically tell them, I have really nice idea, why don't you give me money? Why? It's just weird. They give you money, they don't lend you the money, you don't need to pay it back to them, they don't invest in your company, they don't even buy anything. Right? There's no legal obligation on my behalf to give them anything back. They pledge money and they get a perk if and when I indeed develop the product and I decide that I feel like sending it to them. So essentially I can take the $1 million and fly off to the Caribbean and stay there, which no, we don't have any intention of doing. But really this is what this is. So it's great because it gives you free money, but it's much greater than that. You create a community, in our case over 5,000 people who pledged to us, who's really supportive, who really wants you to succeed, who really think that you have a neat idea and enjoy being part of the process, although they've never met you, most of them. And you can leverage that in many, many ways. First of all, first and foremost to us was to find out if we're really stupid, if we really believe in something that nobody else believes in, we're the only blind ones in the room, or if other people may think that it's a good idea too. And given that 5,000 people gave us money and over 500,000 watched that video in those 45 days and many more afterwards, yeah, we came to realize that it's probably not a bad idea, and there's a lot of people out there who want that. Now, so first we convinced ourselves. Then you convince all your ecosystem that's working with you. So potential investors, potential OEM customers like those big companies, and indeed even subcontractors and suppliers, people who work with you, who watch this movie, and we invested quite a lot of thinking or work in this movie, really get motivated. I spent years before trying to explain what Free will do. Yes, you will write and you will see it on the screen and this and that. No, nobody gets that. They watch 3 minutes of the movie, they get it, and they become motivated. So it's a great platform to do that. And one example of how we used it afterwards, about 3 months after the campaign, we wanted to find, when we were working on the product development, there were features and trade-offs. We wanted to understand what features are important for people and what less. How do people plan to use Free? So we decided to send a survey to our 5,000 backers. Okay? A lot of debate of how long the survey should be or how short. If it's too long, if it's too short, we won't learn anything. If it's too long, nobody could be bothered to do it. We ended up with an 8-minute survey. That's kind of long to sit in front of a computer for 8 minutes. Over 90% of the people who started the survey completed it. What percentage of the 5,000 people do you think answered the survey? Who thinks below 10%? That was our guess. Who thinks over 90%? Who thinks around 50%? Okay, 40%. 2,000 people answered the survey and completed it. That was such an invaluable information. Now, when you go to a focus group, when you're a company, a startup like us and our size, if you get 20 people in the room to spend half an hour with you, you're doing great and it costs you a shitload of money. We had 2,000 people meticulously answering the questionnaire, including, I'll give you an example of one really interesting piece of information that we learned. We asked people in the section that says you don't have to answer that, but it would be great if you would, which pretty much everyone answered. How old are you? Okay. We gave age brackets. Over a third of our backers were over the age of 45. Which to us was a really big surprise. You know, this is a gadget, technical, you know, high-tech, whatever widget, and people, a third of the of our backers were over 45 years old. So that's really interesting because, of course, they have completely different use patterns than people who are 18.
At this point, I would love to open it up for the audience as you have questions. Henrik, and you questions for Gilad.
So what's the end of the story? Is it going to be another 10 years before it's widely commercially available? I mean, what do you project forward? Do you think it's going to actually be widely distributed? Is the crowdsourcing also a way people can cannibalize your product? And do you see a lot of knockoffs coming out? China is notorious for that in particular. If you're going into that market, it's really easy to start to replicate a much less sophisticated version which can supply most people most of the usage that you're portraying. So, and then how much did you spend on the video?
In terms of?
Production cost.
Okay. So I'll start with the easy one. Video was about $10,000 plus some percentage of the success of the Kickstarter, which made it a very nice deal for them and also a very nice deal for us. But it was really not that expensive. I'll continue from that way. In terms of copying the technology, this really cheap piece of plastic packs a whole lot of knowledge in there. If you don't do it 100% right, it wouldn't work. It's binary. It's not that you can do it 90% right and it will have 90% performance. No, if this is optics, if the laser beam doesn't hit where it's supposed to hit, it doesn't work. That's it. It doesn't go to say that if a large Chinese corporation will put 300 engineers on it tomorrow, it wouldn't work, but there's also a lot of signal processing that comes behind it and so on and so forth. So we hope we can protect it. Of course, the answer is always commercial, it's not technical. So if you become successful, you need to keep your price point at the point where it will be more interesting or more cost effective for a large corporation to work with you than to infringe you or to copy you. And you just have to keep your eye on the moving target all the time. In terms of our plans forward, I truly hope it's not going to take another 10 years. Although Henning would love for me to come here for the next 10 years every quarter to lecture. Naturally, we are late on delivery. Surprising for a technology company, but so we were supposed to start shipping last month. Currently, our plan is to start shipping in October, which means that we will have production samples of this thing in a couple of months. A couple of months in general is great answer for a technology company. At any given point in time, you will deliver in 2 months. So ask me next month, it will probably be in a couple of months too. But yes, this is hopefully earlier, around mid-year, we will start producing products and shipping them. And then, of course, it will become a global success. Everybody will use Free everywhere to do whatever they want. All of Henning's students will be sitting in the classroom here with a tablet or a PC and just write notes directly in digital ink on the wonderful presentations of Henning. Next year.
Alexandra.
First of all, I would like to say that Henning does not allow us to use tablets in class.
Because it's not on the keyboard, but with Free it will be different. Otherwise, I'm not going to come.
And then my question is, you raised money from VCs and you also raised money through crowdfunding. And when did you feel biggest pressure? When you had money from VCs or when you had free money? And from the entrepreneur's perspective, when would you advise entrepreneurs to raise money through VCs or crowdfunding?
That's a great question. Is Randy here? No. Okay, good. So we are alone. To me, there's much more pressure raising money from individuals, even through crowdfunding, where it's people that I've never met before, than from financial institutions like VC. The moral responsibility that you feel is much stronger. You really lose sleep at night because people entrusted you, people you know, entrusted you with their money. It's a burden. It's a real burden. Like everything in life, VCs have pros and cons. I'm sure that to have someone like Randy on your board is a great thing, really. You bring so much experience, so much knowledge, so much network. Even just the brand, which Henning discussed about in his lectures. When you have Kleiner Perkins as an investor, OEM customers will not mess with you, because then they will lose access to their hundreds of others' portfolios in their companies in their portfolio. Right? There's a downside as well, which again Randy himself related to himself. If screw up, you're out. They'll make sure you're going to be out. They have all the preemptives in this 50 pages document, preemptive rights, veto rights, these rights, you know, deferred, whatever. They'll make sure that you suffer enough to just walk out. But it may be the best thing for your company if you walk out. Maybe you really are the wrong man for the job. So they may be doing you a favor because they see things that you don't see. So it really, at the end of the day, it's all personal. It depends who it is, what kind of relationship you build with them. You know, VCs in general, they invest in teams. They invest in people. They won't invest in an idea and won't invest in a business plan because that will change 50 times during the next 3 years anyway. They'll invest in a team that they trust to be able to guide this company through everything is going and bring it to a safe haven at the end. I would say that early, like pre-seed and whatever, try to take from individuals because you really need, you're still confused and you need people who will stick with you who don't know better than you, so they will just let you lead the way. At a certain point, you better bring seasoned investors, entrepreneurs, etc. To the fray to help you in all these areas that you don't know, and I don't know plenty. I know much less than I do.
Further questions? Carl Magnus?
Oh, you're ready.
Suppose if it's
Firstly, I thought the video was fantastic. I think you would have a lot of use of that even if you didn't have the crowdfunding campaign. As you said, convincing all the other people to really explaining what it's all about. But the other question is really, in a couple of months, when this will come to the market, will it be full-fledged, what you saw in the video, and at what price?
Yeah, it's...
And the other question is really more strategically, you said, well, it's quite a dangerous route, and you're depending on the OEMs and other people. Did you consider, you had a lot of different applications, but did you consider picking one of them, probably hopefully the easiest and with good potential, and run it yourself, either internally or with a partner?
So first of all, yes, the intention is to bring a full-fledged product like Sweetman here with a touchscreen, with a headset capabilities, with everything in it. And of course, bring it in that it works to spec. Because you know, there have been many attempts to create digital pens over the last decade or two. If you don't perform perfectly, you'll end up in the drawer. You have to have the range of speed that's needed. You have to have the resolution that's needed. You have to have the accuracy that's needed. Otherwise, people would just not have the patience. So hopefully that's going to be the case. And that's where we're aiming for. In terms of, you asked about OEMs.
before that price. What?
Oh, $200 is our pre-sale price right now. We continue to sell after Kickstarter. We continue to sell on our website. In fact, a couple of months ago, 2.5 months ago, we switched to Indiegogo. Unlike Kickstarter, Indiegogo has a follow-on campaign. So in Kickstarter, you do up to 60 days and then it finishes and that's it. Indiegogo allows you to, when you finish the 60 days campaign, switch to in-demand, which is basically a pre-sale shop. on their platform. And that's what we did. Since then, we raised more than $500,000 more in pre-sales. And the average price is $198. There's a case that comes with free that I didn't add. The case is very cool because it's a case. It's also a stand for your phone that you just put the phone on the case and write with it. And it's also a wireless charger when free is inside. So this is being sold for $50 and it's a great seller. So our average deal size is between $200 to $250.
Maybe one or two more questions?
Have you thought of any additional gadgets that could better your product eventually? I mean,
Endless.
can you tell us some?
Let me take one example, which is just because it's counterintuitive maybe in some ways. The OTM sensor is placed here next to the tip of free. And when you write, and yes, I can write on my skin, yes, I can write on any surface that you can see. If you can see it, it means it reflects light. If it reflects light, we can work on it. So when I write, OTM tracks the motion of the tip relative to the surface in 3 dimensions. And this is crucial. So if any of you thought that an optical mouse can do the same thing, no, it can't, because optical mouse only tracks in 2 dimensions. Whereas when you write, you constantly lift the pen off and on the surface, and you need to continue to measure your motion as you do that. For this, you need a 3D motion sensor, and again, we are the only ones. But so the sensor is moving on the surface or next to the surface and measuring its motion relative to the surface. Alternatively, you can take a surface and move it on the face of the sensor. So I have an optical joystick, something that I can put in a steering wheel, for example. If I have a head-up display, I can move and control the cursor on the head-up display in a solid-state way, in a non-mechanical way. I just move my finger on it, it measures the motion of the finger on the face of the sensor and moves the cursor accordingly. I can even tap and it will measure the Z motion, the vertical motion to the sensor, and identify it as a click. This is in the input devices space. Then there's industrial applications, medical applications, automotive applications. Basically, you think of anything that moves that we can look at it without touching it and measure its motion in 3 dimensions, very high accuracy, very high resolution, very broad range of speeds, and with a very cheap mass manufacturable sensor.
Questions relating to your team. How did you keep them motivated for 18 years? How high was the turnover potentially? And also, how did you manage to pay them during 18 years if there was not so much revenues for the company?
So there was a lot of beating up involved. I have the best 2 partners in the world. Unlike me, they're really smart. So the role is that I come up with the problems and they come up with the solutions, which works really well, at least for me. We raised capital over about 16 years ago. We raised over $10 million. We had a team of 30 people. And when we hit the brick wall with one of the OEMs contract that went bad, we had to lay off these people and freeze the operations of the company. To this day, almost 15 years later, we have dinner about twice a year, to which almost 20 people come every year, every time. There's been such a wonderful feeling of togetherness and friendship in the company that people just keep sticking with it. When we started Kickstarter, a month before that, we invited all the former employees of OTM from 15 years ago. About 50 people came. We told them what we're going to do and got them really involved and excited about this. I don't know. I believe in people. I think people are great. I hire people who are much smarter than me so they can get things done. I'm trying to work myself out of a job. I think that's my role.
I had 2 more questions. Then my wife raised her hand, and she's the boss here, so she's going to ask another question.
Okay, so I'll be quick. So you mentioned China is, you imagine, the biggest market. So what's your go-to-market strategy?
So first and foremost, we want to bring investors from China. We want to have local partners that are fully aligned with us on the interests. We understand that we don't understand the market in China, and we need somebody with us who does. So that's the first order of business. Now, to get those Chinese investors, we also need somebody who understands. So we hired a person in Israel who we understand, and she's been working in China for 20 years, closing on 29 years now. Very familiar with the territory, great network, and et cetera, and we are at her mercy to find the right investors. Then with these investors, which are hoping will be big enough to have an impact in the market, but not too much of our industry, so we won't be tainted. So we won't alienate people who don't like them. We plan to work with them on the strategy of how to go there, which vertical to go to first, whether we want to attack the Chinese education market first, whether we want to go to government applications and do a signature recognition device, which is biometric identification per se, which always recognizes you in real time, or whether we want to go mass market and do crowdfunding, for example, in China. There are a number of Chinese crowdfunding platforms which are far bigger than Kickstarter and Indiegogo. I mean, nothing even close. What we raised in 45 days, we can raise there in 2 days and get the exposure. So that may be our go-to-market strategy. But we will do that only, decide on that with a Chinese partner that we will have.
With that said, we're already a little bit over time. One thing I would love to point out. Gilad is actually an INSEAD graduate. You got your MBA, if I recall this correctly, in 1993, right? This is remarkable for a couple of things. First of all, that you said you did everything wrong which you could do, so I appreciate that you kind of put that in. More important, Gilad is representative of so many alumni who have given a ton back to the school on a very continuous base. And while I kind of point you out as an INSEAD alumni, that obviously extends to all the speakers who have come, also to all the other people who have been, Vikas, who's sitting there in the back, who has moderated all of this, Javier, who has moderated the panel, Dietmar. So thanks to all of you kind of for making all this great contribution. And now it's my great pleasure actually to introduce, or kind of to give the word to Hendrik, who was going to conclude the session. And yes, the word is yours.
Wait a minute. Thank you to Gilad.